Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Surah Al-Baqarah, Chapter 2, and we will cover verses 164 to 170. I've given it a title of Need for Serious Reflection in the Creation of Allah. However, there are a few more points covered in today's presentation. These are the references. I've taken some excerpts from Volume 1, The Meanings of the Quran, some from Volume 2, The Meanings of the Quran, and Volume 3, The Meanings of the Quran. And wherever possible, I put down their references as well. This is our contact. We'll go to the first slide, outline of today's presentation. In verse 2163, which we covered previously, the Quran apprised us with the evidence-based fact that there is only one law operating in the universe, and based on this law, the universe is evolving towards its intended destination. And I've quoted the verse over here, wa ilahukum ilahun wahidun. So Quran is saying that your ilah, your model, your guide is one only, and that is Allah Himself. La ilaha, that is, you should not give space to any other ilah, any other deity, any other God in your mind, illa huwa Rahmanur Rahim, but Allah who is Rahman and Rahim. Next, the Quran directs our attention towards the outer physical universe and highlights various physical signs on planet Earth. For example, oceans with ships floating on them, hydrological phenomena, biological life, the blowing of winds. It invites us to use our intellect and reasoning, which is provided free to all of us, to study all this, to expand our vision, to figure out the higher purpose of our finite existence on the planet Earth. So the Quran is again and again asking us and motivating us that look at the signs all around you, and using those signs, you should start thinking, start reflecting, start reasoning, and start discussing. It points to the conduct of the Jamaat-e-Mu'mineen who obey the commands of Allah, and this aspect is contrasted with those who refuse to follow the Quranic guidance. The people who reject the guidance are bound to suffer, because whatever we do now, the outcomes of our actions are going to meet us up in the future. So if we are doing wrong now, according to the Quran, then we are going to suffer at some point when the cumulative effect of these outcomes will face us. As per the law of requital, due to treading on the wrong path of life. So Quran again and again says that if you're on the wrong path, there is no way that you will reach the intended destination. Doesn't matter how much effort you make on this wrong path of life. When the evil effects of people's deeds catch up with them in this life, then mutual wrangling commences between the leaders and their followers. And we can see this mutual wrangling going on, particularly in the West, where people who are now in some economic difficulties, they're continuously accusing their leaders. It is too late at that time, as the time of respite has come to an end. Then the Quran warns us not to follow our unbridled desires, which Quran calls as shaitan and of course Iblis, and not to present the excuse of obedience to forefathers. Obey Allah, that is His laws, via His book. Now we go to the first verse of today's presentation, reflect on the physical signs of the universe. Inna fi khalqis samawati wal ardi wa ikhtilafil layli wan nahari wal fulki allati tajri fil bahri bima yanfa'un nasa wa ma anzalallahu minas samai min ma'in fa ahya bihil arda ba'da mawtiha. I have highlighted this part because it's quite interesting from the physical side to the descending or revelation of the Quran towards us, and that is how we also get life. وَبَثَّ فِيهَا مِن كُلِّ دَابَّةٍ وَتَصْرِيفَ الرِّيَاحِ وَالسَّحَابِ مُسَخَّرِ بَيْنَ السَّمَاءِ وَالْأَرْضِ لَآيَاتٍ لِقَوْمٍ يَعْقِلُونَ. If you want to see how the law of one Allah is operating in the universe and how that law produces constructive results, then ponder on the astounding machinery of the universe and observe how the creation of its highs and lows has come into being. How the perpetual alternation of day and night is continuing with discipline and order. What massive ships laden with beneficial goods, how they float on the bosom of the ocean, and which law is it that is encompassing them in this way. Look at that clean and transparent water which rains down from the clouds and imparts fresh life to the dead land. Moreover, also pay attention to this fact how living things that move around of different kinds of species are spread across the face of the earth. There is so much on the planet Earth that we simply cannot miss the existence of a creator. And that is where, once we find out that this whole functioning of the universe, there is a deliberate thinking behind it, and this creation has a purpose, then Quran will start making sense. How winds change their directions in specific seasons, how clouds, tied in the laws of nature, are pulled around in the intermediate environment between the earth and the heavens. By reflecting on all of these manifestations of nature, man can only reach one conclusion, and that is that the control and organization of the universe in the hands of only one ruling authority. So this functioning, which is very smooth in the outer world, is because of one law which is working across the universe. So the Quran is asking us that if you follow the Quranic laws, Quranic values, then you will also have balance and harmony within your society. But only those people can reach this conclusion who employ their intellect and reasoning. Go to the next slide. Let us recap the human self. And this is something which we should keep in mind, that we are sharing this presentation at the level of ourself. So we are not really physical, we are intellectual, and we are applying our consciousness and listening and then understanding it, and then within our own mind we are reflecting on it. So it is better. That is why I thought that I should include this slide as well, just to remind ourselves. There are fundamentally two doctrines in relation to human life. One doctrine is that the life of a human being remains busy in movement and action in obedience to physical laws. And we can see plenty of that activity across the globe in 2026. And when this machinery ceases to function according to these same laws, then that is called death, as a result of which this person ceases to exist. And we have said this before as well, that most human beings who haven't come to the Quran, they think that the life will end with death. It doesn't matter whether they hold some religious beliefs about the hereafter or not, but deep down they are convinced the moment they die, they are not going to exist. So this is what is noted over here, that if we do not come to understand ourselves, then essentially we live at an animalistic level. This is called Western materialism, secularism, or communism, and also I will add theocracy. The second doctrine is that man is not just defined by his body. Aside from the body, there is another thing within him which is called his self, nafs, or in the terminology of Iqbal, his khudi or his ego. This is neither a product of physical laws, nor is it under the control of these laws. This is the fountainhead of human intent and choice. And that is from where intent and choice comes in, and that we get it through divine energy. And it is on this that the result of every deed of man is, you could say, imprinted. It is not impacted in the slightest by the death of the body. And this is an important point, if we haven't come across this kind of statement previously, to think in our own self. Because as we age, our self does not age. Our feelings, our thoughts do not age. This continues forward, taking these imprints of this individual's deeds with it. This is called the life of the hereafter, in which its rank is defined according to these imprints of which it is the possessor. That is all we do, actions, our thoughts which turn into actions, all those leave an imprint on ourself. and most of the time it becomes part of our memory as well. This is the Quranic doctrine of life. The development of the human self is the purpose and goal of the Quranic program. Because without this kind of a self, that is Quranic self, we simply cannot bring any change in the outer world. So some of us, when we think that why change is not coming in the outer world, they should concentrate on this and look at the human self and its characteristics which it attains after coming to the Quran. This fact is clarified in two succinct verses of Surah Ash-Shams. Truly he succeeds that purifies it, and he fails that corrupts it. We go to the next slide, the pleasure associated with self-development. Sometimes we feel as if it is a punishment to follow the Quranic path, and this comes because of lack of understanding and not proper reflection in the Quran. In fact, there is an infinite amount of pleasure and joy associated with the self-development once we start acquiring it in the light of the Quranic value system. The Quran has stated about itself that the means of the diagnosis and treatment of psychological diseases are contained within it. And we have covered this verse of Surah Yunus previously, sometimes back. Then to what depths of realities has it reached by this? And what kinds of hidden aspects has it invited human knowledge to reach and placed emphasis on? It has stated about its own implicit realities. Soon will we show them our signs in the farthest regions of the universe and their own selves until it becomes manifest to them that this is the truth. And in our case, it is important that we do not wait for the future. We put our best now to find out all these signs and then take benefit out of it. We will keep unveiling those signs of ours which are hidden within the domain of the human self and within the universe. And this is a beauty because within the universe we can see new galaxies are being discovered and there is a lot going on in the physical universe. And in the human self, it is only through the Quran we will come to grips to that level of human inner abilities and potentials which modern psychology simply cannot reach. Until every proclamation of the Quran appears in front as an established reality. So our job is that find out what else is lying within our human self, what are our abilities, and how righteous and how good human being we can become by acquiring this eminence and loftiness towards which the Quran is pointing our direction to. The signs dispersed within the outer universe are those which are becoming uncovered through sense perception, that is scientific research and discoveries. The era of discovery of the hidden realities in the domain of the human self has now begun. As man continues to progress in knowledge of human psychology, who knows what hidden realities of the Quran by becoming uncovered will keep appearing. It is evident from this that in order to comprehend the truths of the Quran, it is essential that the level to which human knowledge has reached should be in the sight of those who are thinking and reflecting in the Quran. And this is our effort as well on this platform, that we try to benefit from all that knowledge, particularly about human psyche, which exists until today. We also refer to it. And this is the very reason that reflecting and reasoning in the Quran cannot be restricted to any era, because it keeps expanding. The more we learn, and with the passage of time and with the changes in the outer world as well, and changes in technology and science, we benefit and our horizon of ourself expands. Nor can any era of individual make the claim that his scholarly conclusions about the Quran are the final word. Go to the next slide, the stature of Adam. The Quran has declared the harnessing of nature to be the duty of Adam, that is man, i.e., this is the status of Adam alone, in which kafir and mu'min are all included. So we should keep in mind that in terms of physical laws, both kafir and mu'min can take benefit out of it. But in terms of self-development, it is only the Quran which can help us to develop ourselves. The status of a mu'min is far ahead of this. As far as the status of Adam is concerned, mu'mineen are also included in this. This is why the Quran has stated in some places It is a fact that there are signs for mu'mineen in the earth and the heavens. In the next verse, it is stated there are signs for those who have assured conviction. In another place, Quran says there are signs for muttaqeen. And we know who are muttaqeen. These are those people who acquire iman and then tread on this path called Sirat-e-Mustaqim by avoiding the pitfalls of life. From these and similar kinds of verses, it is clear that according to the Quran, the harnessing of nature is essential in order to become a mu'min and a muttaqi. It is clear from this that Iman and Taqwa does not become fulfilled without the acquisition of what we call knowledge of the sciences. After emphasizing the use of intellect and reasoning in the universe, the Quran has stated, "These are those signs of Allah which He presents before you with haqq." And we know haqq means something which always produces constructive results. So the Quran says that whole of this universe is created to be haqq, to produce constructive results. And batil is when destructive results are produced. Regarding those people who do not accept iman and haqq, even after this, ask them that if these people do not accept iman in Allah and these kinds of verses of His, then in what will they accept iman? فَبِأَيِّ حَدِيثٍ بَعْدَ اللَّهِ وَآيَاتِهِ يُؤْمِنُونَ. We go to the next verse, 165, the human self's need for a higher model. وَمِنَ النَّاسِ مَنْ يَتَّخِذُ مِنْ دُونِ اللَّهِ أَنْدَادًا يُحِبُّونَهُمْ كَحُبِّ اللَّهِ وَالَّذِينَ آمَنُوا أَشَدُّ حُبًّا لِلَّهِ وَلَوْ يَرَى الَّذِينَ ظَلَمُوا إِذَا يَرَوْنَ الْعَذَابَ أَنَّ الْقُوَّةَ لِلَّهِ جَمِيعًا وَأَنَّ اللَّهَ شَدِيدُ الْعَذَابِ. And there is a word hub appeared over here, so we'll go through its details in after these meanings. There are also such people in the world who think that entities other than Allah also possess the same control and authority which Allah possesses. They obey their commands and instructions in exactly the same way that the laws of Allah should be obeyed. But those people who have iman in the truth of the divine laws, they obey these laws with great earnestness and do not include any human being in the authority of Allah. And this is what Hubbun Lillah means. They obey no one other than these laws. What is stated above cannot be understood by these people at this present time. When the consequences of this wrong path appear before them, then they will see with their own eyes that in the universe, authority and sovereignty are in truth possessed by Allah, not by anyone other than Him. The consequence of abandoning His laws and following the commands formulated by human beings, that is the man-made system, Quran calls it Taghut, and conferring the status of Allah onto man in this way, that is obeying those laws which are man-made, can be nothing other than ruin and destruction. Now we'll go to the next slide, common translation of the verse. I put it down over here then just to compare the two meanings. And I've gone through it. وَمِنَ النَّاسِ مَنْ يَتَّخِذُ مِنْ دُونِ اللَّهِ أَنْدَادًا يُحِبُّونَهُمْ كَحُبِّ اللَّهِ وَالَّذِينَ آمَنُوا أَشَدُّ حُبًّا لِلَّهِ وَلَوْ يَرَى الَّذِينَ ظَلَمُوا إِذْ يَرَوْنَ الْعَذَابَ أَنَّ الْقُوَّةَ لِلَّهِ جَمِيعًا وَأَنَّ اللَّهَ شَدِيدُ الْعَذَابِ. Yet there are men who take for worship others beside Allah. See, the word worship has appeared over here. That is why the religious word is highly ritualized as equal with Allah. They love them as they should love. So people in the religious domain, that is sectarian Islam, they are quite happy to do all these religious practices of worship, and they think that is the way this verse should be interpreted. But those of faith are overflowing in their love for Allah. Again, faith is noted over here as a translation, whereas it should be related to iman or conviction. If only the unrighteous could see, behold, they would see the punishment. That to Allah belongs all power, and Allah will strongly enforce the punishment. Note the strong bias in this translation towards the religious beliefs of worship and emotive love supporting the false belief of Allah as whimsical and in need of human worship, i.e., love of Allah. And we come across these kind of statements, particularly among those who are mystics as well, and some of the very emotive and people who are very much into religious practices. And this is not right. This verse is pointing towards obeying the laws of Allah, not some kind of an emotive love towards Allah. Allah is not visible as well. This emotive love, which we experience in the physical world, is between human beings. And we know what is the consequence of such emotive love is, what kind of outcomes are related to this. A human psyche holding such beliefs is of no use to the establishment of the system of the deen of Allah. So sectarian Islam simply cannot establish the system of deen because their psyche is contaminated, and a contaminated psyche will only produce contaminated outlook, contaminated effects in the outer world. They cannot come to the Quran in the first place. Explaining the meanings of Nidd, Andad is the plural of it. This term has appeared in the verse. At this place in the Quran, the word Nidd has been used for a partner and an equal of Allah. This is also a marvel of the Quran. The meaning of Nidd is to be a partner, a colleague, the equal of someone. But there is a condition in this that the two entities which are considered to be the equal of each other, their state should be such that each one of them should draw towards his own self equally. So there is some kind of an attraction in that. That is some kind of intention to be drawn by that. Andad is the plural of this word Nidd. Its meaning is clear that when you accept the private ownership of men over land, firstly, you will accept them to be equals and of the same status as that of Allah, i.e., will accept them as partners, that is shriek. And secondly, that the endeavor of each one of them will be to extract the maximum from this fundamental source of risk and is produced towards himself and also to deprive others of it. So in a non-Quranic word, we can see that how people have affinity for land, for owning some kind of piece of earth. And this is what is going on between different countries. For example, in the first place, according to the Quran, there should be no borders drawn between on the planet Earth. The Earth is for every human being, and we do not have right to even to draw any lines on it and then start owning it. It is even the worst of crimes according to the Quran. Just reflect that from the system of private ownership of land, whether it is the private ownership of one individual or a group of individuals, i.e., some particular tribe, family, clique, party, or the nation's private ownership, there cannot be any other outcome than that every owner among them will be in pursuit of accumulating the maximum. Never mind if as a result of this, the creation of Allah might die of hunger. And this is going on across the world, and we know majority of the human beings are poor and at the lower end of the society. You will see that wherever the Quran has mentioned these kinds of andad other than Allah, directly or indirectly, their connection is with ownership of the means of sustenance and the distribution of risk. The Quranic meaning of Hub Allah. There are numerous meanings of al-hubu, out of which 4 are more important, which are related to this verse. To deliberately hold on to something, to remain firm on this. For the results of something to rise up and appear before us, for example, grains emerge in the ears of the crop. To desire or like, to protect someone, to hold on to them supportively. So we can see that hub, which is normally translated as love, and emotional love has none of these things. It is very much related to the system. According to these meanings, it is apparent that the meaning of man having love for Allah will be to hold firmly to the book of Allah or the laws of Allah, i.e., to obey these with fidelity and durability. It is this that the Quran has proclaimed as holding on to the rope of Allah. Tasimu bihablillahi jamiya wala tafarraku, the Quran has said in this verse. And the meaning of Allah having love for man will be to protect man, to give him support, to make his balanced efforts fruitful, This is what is called the approval of Allah. And that is not possible without the system. O Rasool, say to them that the way to love Allah is that you obey me. That is, the messenger is following the Quran, the way it should be followed. And what he's saying is that I will serve as a human model, so follow me. Come along with me and establish the system. قُلْ إِن كُنتُمْ تُحِبُّونَ اللَّهَ فَاتَّبِعُونِي يُحْبِبْكُمُ اللَّهُ وَيَغْفِرْ لَكُمْ وَذُنُوبَكُمْ. And I have highlighted this as well, يَغْفِرْ لَكُمْ ذُنُوبَكُمْ, that it will give you protection from all the mistakes and errors of judgment you might be making. وَاللَّهُ غَفُورٌ رَحِيمٌ, that it will give you protection and as well as nourishment. Whoever obeyed the messenger, in reality he obeyed Allah. And for us will be to obey the message, that is the Quran. It is clear that when it is stated in verse 331, if you love Allah, its meaning is to obey Allah. I.e., the meaning of the verse will be that if you wish to obey Allah, then the technique for this is that you should obey His messenger. If you act in this way, then what will be its outcome? Allah will love you, i.e., will protect you from the harmful effects of your errors. He is the one who protects and provides nourishment. Next slide is continuing the Quranic meaning of Hubballah. Note that in this verse, the meaning of love for Allah by human beings means to obey Him, and the meaning of love by Allah for His servants is to protect human beings, to provide them with the means of sustenance, to produce grains in the fields of their righteous deeds. And we can see that what kind of a result the human emotive love produces in the world. It is stated in Surah Al-Ma'idah, O Jamaat Mu'mineen, whoever among you turns away from the deen of Allah, he will only harm himself. He will not harm Allah in any way. And this is important for us to understand and make our children and others understand that this life is one-way street. And if the intended destination in our mind is not Sirat-e-Mustaqim and beyond the death, then we simply cannot acquire that self which is defined by the Quran. Then it is stated, Allah will bring such a nation in their place who will obey Allah, and Allah will protect them. Their characteristics will be these, that they will be gentle like silk towards those who accept this system, and will be bowed like a branch heavy with fruit, but hard as steel against the opponents of this system. They will keep continuously toiling and making efforts for the establishment and strengthening of this system, and will never be affected by the sneers and taunts of any, that is, the opponents. In fact, one develops that kind of a strength, that is inner strength, through the Iman and after doing Saleh deeds, that these things simply do not bother Jamaat-e-Mu'mineen. From this, the meaning of their having love for Allah is clear. And as far as Allah having love for them is concerned, it has been elucidated by stating, they will be declared to be deserving of Allah's favors, their efforts and striving will be fruition. Because they have worked hard, and that is why Quran calls it fawz, that it is something which you will achieve yourself. So Jannat of the Quran is achieved by Mu'mineen, so nobody can take it away. It's just getting education from some university, and once we acquire that kind of a knowledge and training, nobody can take it away from us, even if we lose that degree. That is a piece of paper. Let us go to the next verse, 166. Two different paths of life, two different outcomes. Is tabarallazina uttabi'u minallazina attaba'u wara'ul azaba wa taqattat bihimul asbab. At that time, they will see that those, that is the rulers, leaders, and religious chiefs whom they used to follow, how they are becoming aloof from them, how those sports which they had associated with them are crumbling, and how their mutual connections are becoming severed. For example, nowadays, the relationship between the state, that is the elite, and the common man is really economic. There is no question of self coming into it. And the moment economic downturn comes, then people start quarreling with each other, they start arguing with each other. The common translation of this verse is, then would those who are followed clear themselves of those who follow them, they would see the penalty and all relations between them would be cut off. When the reality about these leaders and the religious chiefs will be exposed, then what the state of their faithful servants and followers will be at that time, the Quran informs us, and we move to the next verse, that is 167, which is really connected to this verse. Verse 167, without the self-development via the Quran, there is no access to Allah's Jannat. Very powerful statement. وَقَالَ الَّذِينَ اتَّبَعُوا لَوْ أَنَّ لَنَا كَرَّةً فَنَتَبَرَّأَ مِنْهُمْ كَمَا تَبَرَّأُوا مِنَّا كَذَلِكَ يُرِيهِمُ اللَّهُ أَعْمَالَهُمْ حَسَرَاتٍ عَلَيْهِمْ وَمَا هُمْ بِخَارِجِينَ مِنَ النَّارِ. So if we do not follow the Quran, we simply cannot come out of the fire created by man-made systems. At that time, these people will say that if the flow of time could be turned back for just one time, then we too will turn our eyes away from these leaders and religious chiefs in the same way that they have turned their eyes away from us. And we see plenty of these examples in today's world as well, where countries which are on the path of decline, the people over there who have even benefited from those systems, they start complaining as well, and they also start accusing their elite. In this way, the outcomes of their wrong path will appear unveiled before them, and they will witness that those entities whom they used to view as powerful advocates for themselves, to what extent those entities have reduced them to a state of helplessness and feebleness. Because on the wrong path, once the outcomes of that wrong path appear sometimes in the future, then they cannot escape the adverse effects of their doings, and this is what the law of requital states very clearly. So helpless and weak, so dispirited and dejected that they have no stamina left to extricate themselves from this destruction. So this is another important point over here, that those who are following the Quran know the cause of it, so they are already prepared for it, and they don't become dispirited or hopeless, because if they are working towards the system of deen, they think and expect that there might be an opportunity for this system to be established somewhere on the planet Earth. The common translation is, and those who followed would say, if only we had one more chance, we would clear ourselves of them, because they are very annoyed now, as they have cleared themselves of us. Thus will Allah show them the fruits of their deeds as nothing but regrets. And this is another important point, that the Quran prevents us from becoming regretful or disappointed, because we already know which way the man-made system is heading. Nor will there be a way for them out of the fire. Let's go to the next slide. The flow of time does not turn backwards. And this is a fact, and we know it. Once a week has passed, we cannot get that week back. The only thing which is in our control is our future, which has yet to come. It has been stated in this verse that when the veil of deception of these leaders will be torn away, they will say that if the past time could return once again, then we will give them a taste of their own medicine. But the Quran states that this is longing of theirs cannot be fulfilled. A supreme point has been highlighted in this. As far as this word is concerned, this matter is explicit that time once lost cannot be regained. And that is why time is created. The Quran says day and night are created as signs for you and to count days and count time. The past can never become the future. And this time is important because we got a finite life on this planet Earth because of our physical body. The flow of life does not go backwards. Time goes forward, not backwards. The Quran declares unequivocally that after death, man cannot return to this world again. And we cannot, because the only route to come to this world is biological. That is through man and woman, husband and wife, mother and father, whichever way we wish to look at. It's a biological route. And if once we die, and secondly, we have that self, which has acquired a certain form of its own. So even if as child somebody comes, firstly nobody can come back, but the children who are born over here, they don't have a self. They have to create their own self as they live their life. It is stated in Surah Al-Mu'minun, until that time that death stands on the heads of these people who were treading on the wrong path, he says that, "O my Rabb, if you send me back into this world once more, then I will do a lot of righteous deeds." And I've come across this kind of statement from some people. If you ask them, particularly old people, that if you are given another chance, what will you do differently? And some will say that I wish I could be more righteous. It will be said to him that this desire of yours is hollow. It cannot happen now. There is a curtain behind these dead ones. Now they cannot go behind it. So there is no connection between those who have left this world and people who are still on this planet Earth. So once ourself goes into the next life, it is totally cut off from the previous life. Our life is not cyclic. So this concept of reincarnation or transmigration, these are all false according to the Quran. In fact, these don't stand any chance if we start looking into it. And as I have said, that if we look at the physical life and our own human self, then we will see that there is no possibility of anyone coming back to this life. It is noted in Surah Shura that the inhabitants of hell will say, if somehow we can return to the world once again, then we will also demonstrate by being among those who have Iman. Again, these are all wishful thinking. So that is why we got an excellent opportunity, at least on this platform, that we are going through very finer aspects of the system of Deen in relation to our psyche and our self-development. The stream of time never turns backward. This either halts at one place like the death of the body or moves forward. In the state of the human self, it advances forward from this worldly life. At this point, we are confining ourselves to these points of discussion. Further explanations will come during the discussion of Jahannam. In fact, we can go through the book, The Life in the Hereafter. What does the Quran say? There's a lot covered over there in this regard. In the verse under view, the Quran has stated that political leaders and religious chiefs let people follow them by displaying a mirage. Whole of this democracy and the party system is about displaying a mirage, giving false hopes to people. And the reality appears before the public at that time when the veil over these treacheries is torn away. But at that time, the outcomes of this evil path of theirs become the cause for their destruction. In any case, they have lost a lot of time, and most of these human beings, in fact, all of these human beings who are part of the party system, become old and then die at some point in the future. Hence, nothing changes due to their hue and cry. How much responsibility the populace bears in this will be explained in its own turn when the exchanges between the populace and their leaders in Jahannam will be depicted. All these are covered in the book, The Life in the Hereafter. What does the Quran say? We go to next two verses, 168 and 169. Obedience to one's unbridled desires cannot provide access to self-development, and that is why we need to obey the Quran. So study of the Quran and then benefiting from it is extremely serious and deliberate type of act we have to do, and then enjoy it as well. So the purpose of this platform is to provide that opportunity where we clarify any doubts, any suspicions, any reservations we might have, and then come to the Quran and understand it the way it wants us to understand the system of Deen. Ya ayyuhan nasu kulu mimma fil ardi halalan tayyiban wala tattabi'u khutuwatish shaitani innahu lakum aduwwum mubin. Innama yamurukum bis-su'i wal fahsha'i wa an taqulu 'ala Allahi ma la ta'lamun. They keep teaching lessons to the people to create inequalities in the society and to only take care of your own vested interests. And this is a fact. Under the man-made system, if you talk to anyone, people will give advice, look after your interests. But they don't talk about the interests of those who are left behind, that is yatim and miskeen in the world. and to keep hoarding as much wealth as possible. And the irony is that they say about their own self-created maslak that this is a divine decree, this is true shariat. And we know maslak means way and some kind of pattern. And shariat, we are aware of it, that all those things which are non-Quranic, so that is what it means. O mankind, see to it that you do not follow behind these people who rebel against the laws of Allah and follow their own vested interests. Do not accept what they say. They are not discussing your welfare. They are your avowed enemies. See how the Quran makes things clear to us right at the outset, once we come to the Quran, that this is how the man-made system functions. So we are not likely to be deceived by the system. It is not the decree of Allah that you should gather up everything for yourself and in this way create such a situation in society that some possess piles of wealth and another does not even have the assurance of one square meal. His command is that you keep the sources of the rizq bestowed by Allah available for the sustenance of the whole of mankind. And that is why Quran says about mu'mineen, وَمِمَّا رَزَقْنَاهُمْ يُنْفِقُونَ, that is, they make their rizq and their earnings available for others, and take from it only that which is according to your needs. This is the method to consume the divine rizq in a halal and tayyib way. And this is what halal means. We are living in a world which is haram. So we should stop looking for halal in man-made system. Next slide is the meaning of Fahsha. A detailed discussion about halal and tayyib has been covered in former volumes. In fact, we have gone through it previously, so I just copied it over here so that we can go back to volume 1 and look at these verses. Take another look at these verses. The word tayyib has appeared before. Again, we should go through it in volume 2. And a detailed discussion about shaitan has been covered in volume 2, chapter 2. And we can also look at the Human Self and Iblis. That is the book by Pervez. The fundamental meaning of al-fuhsh is to exceed the limit, to commit an excess. Then this word stated to be used for every derogatory, condemnable, and immoral act. But the meaning of Fahsha is to be miserly. Perhaps this is because among the Arabs, being miserly was the most despised behavior. That is, holding on to the wealth and not letting others benefit from it. It is elaborated in verse 268 where it is stated, Shaitan makes you fearful that if you give away spare wealth to meet the needs of others, then you will become poor and deprived. Hence, it keeps goading and urging towards miserliness, that is Fahsha. And this is the hallmark of man-made system. Contrary to this, the system of Allah guarantees that you will remain protected from every kind of need and you will keep obtaining ample sustenance. This guarantee is provided from that Allah whose means and sources are very vast, and He has knowledge of the needs of everyone. Once we establish the system of deen, we will see that how true are these statements of the Quran, where we will be able to make use of all these divine attributes and see how the rizq, the sustenance, multiplies in that piece of land. We go to the next slide, continuing with Fahsha and the meaning of Sayyat. This is also reiterated in other places of the Quran, that is, Shaitan will command Fahsha and Munkar. Contrary to this, Allah does not command Fahsha. Rather, Allah commands not to commit Fahsha. He describes the attributes of the system of Allah as the system of Salat stops Fahsha, that is, it stops you from selfishness, vested interest, and Munkar, which means the hateful acts. It should be made clear that the word Fahsha also appears for other condemnable acts. For examples will appear at their relevant places in this volume 3. In verse 169, the other word meriting an explanation is asu, whose plural is as-sayyat. The antonym of su'un is hasanatun, and the antonym of sayyat is hasanat. So that is the opposite of evil, that is the righteous deeds. These words appear in the Quran many times. Among us, the meaning of Hasanat is virtues and the meaning of Sayyiat is wrongs. But the Quranic meanings of these terms, that is virtue and wrong, are far wider than the meanings which are prevalent among us. Scholars of linguistics have said that husn means for something to be in a correct balance and proportion. The word fasad appears as opposite to this, which means for the society to become unbalanced. In connection with the story of Qarun in the Quran, the capitalist system is declared as al-fasad, and the word husn has appeared as opposite to this. We can have a look on this verse 2877. The meaning of Hasanat. The meanings of Hasanat will be such works through which man's own self and the equilibrium of a society, i.e., its balance and proportion, is maintained. And this can only happen under the system of deen. So we should not be carried away by some good deeds here and there within the man-made system or their welfare system. That has nothing to do with the system of deen. System of deen is far, far higher than these kind of man-made systems. And in opposition to this, the meaning of Sayyat will be such works due to which the human self and the equilibrium of society is disturbed. So Quran takes a holistic view. It says that even if one man feels isolated in a society, you should make the society in a way that no one in that society should feel left out or desperate for basic needs of life. From this, it is clear to what extent the true meanings of Hasanat and Sayyiat are wider and more comprehensive compared to their prevalent meanings of virtue and evil. When balance becomes created in the human self, which is called a balanced personality, then because of this, husn is created in its conduct and character. And when some society becomes balanced, then it achieves the prosperities of life. Very important, unless we have a human self which consists of a balanced personality and has all those characteristics and attributes, we should keep striving very hard, because that is where, by coming together of these selves, will form a Jamaat-e-Momineen, and they will be then become eligible for the law of Allah to get power in some piece of land on His planet. Contrary to this, when an individual's balance becomes disturbed, then he becomes a psychological patient and his conduct and character become unhealthy. We can see plenty of these people in the world by looking at all the medicines which people take to counter depression. And when the balance of a society is disturbed, then chaos, that is fasad, appears in every aspect of life. When these meanings of asu and al-Fahsha, that meaning will become clearly understood, which is noted above. And from this, it will also become clear what it means from rizq-e-halal and tayyib. The will of Allah is that the means of sustenance, which He has bestowed without any recompense and free, present in the earth, its distribution is done in this way that every person keeps getting it according to his needs without having to beg someone, and in this way the balance of a society is not disturbed. Imbalances do not become created in it. But selfish people with vested interest desire that they should stockpile it all for themselves, and so that in this way imbalances arise in a society. We go to the last verse of today's presentation, 170. Continuing to follow in the footsteps of forefathers prevents people from coming to the Quranic guidance. This is another very important point, that people follow the path of least resistance, and the path of least resistance is to keep doing what majority is doing and what forefathers or ancestors have done. وَإِذَا قِيلَ لَهُمُ اتَّبِعُوا مَا أَنزَلَ اللَّهُ قَالُوا بَلْ نَتَّبِعُ مَا أَلْفَيْنَا عَلَيْهِ آبَاءَنَا أَوَلَوْ كَانَ آبَاؤُهُمْ لَا يَعْقِلُونَ شَيْئًا وَلَا يَهْتَدُونَ. When it is said to them that what is sent down by Allah, that is the Quran, obey it, they say that nay, we will continue to follow that very path on which we found our forefathers. I.e., even if their forefathers did not have intellect or reasoning, nor are moving on the path of Wahi, even when they will keep treading in their footsteps, and how strange this is. And this is very visible because if ancestors were on the right path, by following them, we should have a society which is free from fear and huzn. But if the society is declining continuously and going from bad to worse, that means this path is not really for us. The common translation of this verse is, when it is said to them, follow what Allah has revealed, they say, nay, we shall follow the ways of our fathers. What? Even though their fathers were void of wisdom and guidance. So Quran over here is saying is that you should use your intellect and also look at your forefathers, that is parents, grandparents, relations who are older, that are they using their intellect and reasoning according to the Quran or not? Because if they are not on the Quran, then obviously they are against the Quran. But if they are on the Quran, you will know that they are on the Quran because they will be joining the Jamaat-e-Mu'mineen. Maslak of Taqleed, the cult of forefather worship. And this is very deeply embedded, particularly in the religious domain. Regarding the blind following of the Maslak-e-Taqleed, this has been written about in detail in the meanings of the Quran, Volume 1. This may be looked at again in these verses. The sign of life is movement, and death is recognized by immobility. In Islam, idolatry is declared as being shirk. The meaning of wasan. Now, this is the term which is used in one of the verses, and this will become clear as we go through it. The word which appears for this in the Quran is awsan, ar-rijsa minal, and fajtanibul awsan, and this has appeared in verse 22-30, which is the plural of wasan. The meaning of wasan is immobility and inertia, lack of movement, becoming static and not moving. And this is what happens when we follow forefathers, ancestors, and past culture and past traditions. The reason for calling idolatry as wasan is because it is static at one point. From the aspect of this basic meaning, every concept or way of life which has no movement remaining in it, which becomes static, is wasan. When the Quranic code of life is brought into action, then such a society comes into existence, which is a reflection of continuous movement and persistent efforts. And this is what Quran says, that if you have become static, then you are in a state of batil. You are not moving forward. The meaning of the persistent movement is that a society remaining within the four walls of the immutable principles of the Quran goes on to remain congruent with the changing and developing demands of the era. Because Quran wants us to go forward. And that is why we are given that self, that intellect and reasoning abilities and potentials which have the capacity to go forward. They have a capacity to expand. And in fact, the same self which is expanding here in the light of the Quran will keep on expanding in the life of the hereafter. And it is very reassuring to convince ourselves about our own self and its development. Continuing with the issue of idolatry of forefathers. In this way, this system acquires the form of a living movement. If immobility develops within it, then it will be in the condition of being wasan. And we can see this as well. For example, if we have a very healthy body and suddenly we fall sick, even small ailment like cough and cold, we will see that we become static. We have no desire to work anything because the body is not healthy. And if our self is not healthy, then we can see that how much damage we do to ourself, because this is the self which will earn us another life of paradise in the hereafter. This is that wasan or idol which is worshipped by those nations on whom mental immobility and practical inertia becomes imposed. And we can see plenty of examples in the Muslim world. It is surprising that we ignored this great point of the Quran, whereas Western thinkers understood this thing. Hence, a great philosopher, Ian Whitehead, in his book, The Adventure of Ideas of Our Time, writes, the keynote of idolatry is contentment with the prevalent gods. So if we are happy with our present deities and gods, which the Quran says replace them with Allah, then of course we are in a state of inertia. In this kind of idolatry, the remnants of ideologies and rituals of a living and dynamic system of life survive, and their meanings, exposition, and goals disappear from the eyes. This madhab or religion is a mummified core of deen whose guardians are religious chiefs, and we can see this evident example in the Muslim world. What is the consequence of remaining glued to these soulless customs and lifeless beliefs? And we can see all these beliefs and customs are producing absolutely no result in the outer world. But still, people are sticking to it because this is the path of convenience. About these, this very philosopher writes, the consequence of remaining attached to lifeless forms is a slow decline in which those rituals continue to be repeated. And this is the beauty of rituals, that people keep repeating them without getting any result. Due to this, only a mirage of civilization and progress remains. The reality disappears. Finally, the Quranic verdict on non-thinking obedience. One fundamental difference between a human being and an animal is that an animal without thinking, without choice and intent, keeps following the maslak of its forefathers. I thought this is a beautiful sentence written in this book by Pervez. The consequence of this is that they do not have any potential to become something. They do not have this ability as they are not possessors of choice and intent. Animals don't have choice and intent. They just are programmed by nature, behave the way they behave. A sheep, whatever it was 1 million years ago, it is still the same today. The offspring of a sheep can only become a sheep. And this is why there is a stagnancy among Muslims, because they have converted their deen into religion. This is the outcome of blindly following the maslak of forefathers, whether these are animals and whether animal-looking human beings acquire it. In order to make this maslak understood, the Quran has given this very example when it declared, the simile of religious leaders and those who follow them is like a flock of sheep with a shepherd in the rear. The shepherd has learned some sounds from his forefathers without words and some words without meanings. He utters these sounds and keeps repeating them, and the flock of sheep who are used to these sounds keep turning around in tune with these sounds. Neither the shepherd knows the meaning and purpose of these sounds, nor are the flock of sheep capable of understanding these sounds. These are those deaf, dumb, and blind ones who do not use their intellect. They are human beings, yet animals, rather worse than that. Animals are constrained as they do not have the ability to think and reason, and these animal-looking human beings who are possessors of these potentials adopt the path of animals. Very severe verdict by Allah on these people. Thanks for your time and for sharing this today. Please feel free to share it with your contacts. You may like to subscribe for future talks related to the Quranic system of Deen.